Welcome to the Liberation is Lit podcast, where we believe in the power of storytelling and the force of social change. I'm your host, Taylor Simon, and in this podcast, we think that stories have a profound impact to amplify voices, challenge norms, and foster understanding. So I'm here today with Marla Taviano, my good friend and fellow author, and we're just gonna chat about all of the things. Something that Marla and I have learned is that we are very go with the flow type people. So very excited for this conversation today to see where the flow takes us. So, Marla, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and share a little bit about your journey into deconstruction and what inspired you to go on this path?
Thank you, Taylor. I am also excited to see where the flow takes us. Yeah, my name is Marla. I'm 48 years old. I live in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm from Ohio. I lived there for 39 years and then Cambodia for 5 years and now Colombia for 4 years. So Columbus, Cambodia, Colombia. I sometimes get them confused. I am a single mom as of 2020 to some young adult kids that live with me and are really great. We have a lot of fun together. And I grew up in a small town in Ohio. And what I didn't know at the time was that it was very conservative and very white. I mean, I knew it was white, but when you're white and you live in a place that's really white, you don't think about how white it is. Kind of like they say that fish don't realize that they're living in water. And I, yeah, I went to church every Sunday morning for church, like Sunday school church, then Sunday night, then Wednesday night. And my life, our family's life, really revolved around our faith and what we believe. Then I went to a Christian college, so I still didn't get out of that. And my high school was a public high school, but it was so small, and so many of my teachers were also Christian. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And fast forward a little bit to getting well, then I met my I met my now ex-husband at a church camp where we were both counselors. So it's like big, huge theme running through my days of my life. And then we went on to have three daughters who are now 23, 21, and 18. And in 2015, we moved to Cambodia, kind of as what I would now call missionaries, but also just doing humanitarian work. And before that, right before that, in 2012, when Trayvon Martin was killed, that was the big catalyst for waking me up, which I it's really hard to think about that a mom had to lose her son, that someone's child died for me to wake up to white supremacy and racism. It's not that I'm not saying I didn't know anything about it before then. We had actually helped a black pastor friend of ours plant plant is the word that they use for starting a new church. I don't know why it's called that. You plant this church. Okay. But it was a multi-ethnic church in Columbus, Ohio. And so I was starting to learn different things and getting out of my white bubble. But then when Trayvon was killed and one of my new friends who was black put on Facebook, why aren't any of my white friends talking about this? And I didn't know who she was talking about. So I'm assuming I Googled it. And then it just started me on this journey of realizing how white everything was in my life and how whiteness rules the world and how my beliefs are playing into that, how my religion and my faith is actually playing into that. So it was a pretty slow process. And I tell people that back then I had the quote unquote luxury of going slow, which is not really true. We never have the luxury of waking up slowly because the slower we're waking up, the more and more people are suffering and being harmed and dying. But I did go pretty slowly, and it went from realizing that the history we've been taught is not all true. We're not hearing the whole story, learning about white supremacy, realizing that everything I believed about the queer community, about gay people, how they shouldn't be gay if they want to go to heaven, and all of this, it just started to unravel. And there was a lot of pain involved. My sister disowned me, different things happened. But on the other side of it now, it there's a lot that you learn that's really hard, and then there's so much beauty that you're opened up to. And I was just on a podcast with my friend Robert, who's a Black man, and we were talking about poetry and different things. And I was saying how I try not to be jealous of different friends. It's kind of tongue in cheek. I'm not really jealous, but jealous of friends who've been writing poetry all along. Like I wrote poems when I was 6, and then again when I was 45, or not being jealous of friends who read Toni Morrison in high school when I didn't read her until I was like 42. So the world that had been opened up to me are like equal part pain and beauty. And so I like to help wake people up to that, but then also, and you're doing the same thing. I mean, it's that balance of showing how hard everything is, but then how much beauty and celebration there is too. So yeah, so now I don't identify anymore as a Christian. That's still, there's a lot of that that's still inside of me, a part of me, but so much of it was toxic that I couldn't stay in the church while harm was being done to people outside of the church. I had to pick, I decided to stand on the outside with them. Some people can stand inside and fight for change, but that's not what I decided was the right fit for me. And now the way that I love my neighbor, which is the Bible thing that I still hold on to, is a lot through books, through sharing books, through platforming other authors, buying books for my friends to sell in their bookstores and stuff like that.
Speaking of your platform, your Instagram page, White Girl Learning, that's how I first encountered you. And it's so funny because I didn't, I thought I first interacted with you when I saw that you were in Colombia, but I realized I had been following you when you were still in Cambodia. So
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I, I didn't put it together that I was like, wait. Remember, I followed you specifically because you were doing like this deconstruction journey, and I thought it was really cool that you were in Cambodia. And then I don't know why I thought like, oh, like somebody just happened to follow in Colombia, but yeah, it just all connected. But on your platform, you talk about like all of the books that you were reading and how that helped you in your journey of deconstruction and what you learned about social justice. What I'm interested in learning from you is what inspired you to share your journey like publicly, and have you found any like benefits or challenges to learning out loud?
Yeah. Many, many benefits and many, many talents. I think what inspired me to share this publicly is because I'd been doing that all along. It was just a different journey. So, my first book that I had published, I have 4 traditionally published books, 2006, 7, 8, and 9. So, I was still very much conservative evangelical Christian at that time. I was writing about just what I knew, and that was marriage and motherhood. And so that's what those books were about. And the sad story of my publishing career is that my books came into the world before my social media presence, because I don't know when you got online. You're a lot younger than I am, so I don't know when that happened for you. But in 2006, I wasn't on any form of social media. I started a blog in December of 2005, and then my book came out 3 months later, but I wasn't on Facebook. I don't even know if there was, I don't know when Instagram started or Twitter. Like Facebook was 2007 for me, I think. Twitter 2009. Instagram was 2014. So what I didn't know is that you couldn't just write a book and then the publisher put it in all the bookstores and everybody bought it. You had to actually talk. And I wasn't online, and I had two little ones. I had three little ones. Like my youngest, who's 18 now, she was 2 months old when my first book came out. So I wasn't like traveling around the country sharing this stuff. So they all went out of print except for one, which I'm really grateful for now. So I have been telling that story. I mean, I wrote a book about marriage where I just told everything. I wrote a book about sex. Like as a conservative evangelical Christian, that's the whole thing. So I had always, that had been what I did, was write about things and share them, whether I was standing in front of groups of people or online. So when my faith started to shift and I started waking up to things, it was just natural that I shared that. The benefit, they were there all along. They're really coming now. There were a lot of challenges at the beginning. I wasn't super great at what I learned, and I don't actually know how I feel about it today. There are a lot of people doing anti-racism work. Some people are very firm. They yell, they're angry, which is fine for them. I'm not policing how anybody does this. Some people are super kind and soft and gentle and go slow, and you could even say coddle people. And I just know that I turned a lot of people off at the beginning, but I'm not really sorry about it. I was just doing what I knew as I was learning, and it was so blatant and so, yes, after you wake up to it, like with Trayvon Martin, and you as this white woman who had no idea that Black men were getting gunned down by police, not just Trayvon Martin, but all the time, all the way back. And you can tie these things, like you learn. I didn't even know what Jim Crow was. Like I must have learned it in school. And I say that maybe I didn't learn it. It might, but it didn't make any impact on me. I didn't remember anything about it. So relearning or learning for the first time about Jim Crow, about a school to prison pipeline, and all of this terminology that was new to me. And I just wanted everybody to know. So I'm out here saying, hey, everybody, we're all racist. Did you know that? Like all of us are racist. And that didn't go over very well with some people. But I will say that I had people who unfriended me in 2016 come back in 2020 after George Floyd was murdered and say, I get it now. I'm sorry that I unfriended you. Could we be friends again? So yeah, I started this stuff out loud because I'd always been doing it. It was just a very new thing. So for some people, this is a super big shock, like cognitive dissonance. Wait a second. We thought Marla was like this, and what is happening? And so for my sister, she couldn't handle all of that. And it was too much. I've learned that I read somewhere that you can only call into question like 5% of what you believe at any given time. And if someone comes along and gives you too much new information, you just shut down. You flee, you freeze, you fight, because you can't handle it all. So now there aren't a lot of people left that are following me or hanging out with me that hate everything I'm saying. Some of them I blocked if they got too unkind. Some of them just left. And I'll get occasional comments and pushback, but the people following me now are a very different group of people than used to follow me. Some of them might be the same, and it's because they were also on that journey with me. So the fact that I started all of this well before a lot of people did, and I was not the first. Like there are so many people that I'm finding out. They're like, oh, I started deconstructing when I was 18. And I'm like, lucky, 30, whatever. So there are different people now in my sphere, and it's more people who are open to hearing what I have to say, open to changing their mind about things. And I will always try to be a bridge between people who believed what I used to believe and what I believe now. But I don't waste time fighting with people who only want to fight. They don't want, they don't really want to hear what I have to say. They don't really want to engage with that and really think critically. And so I don't bother with that. But what's lucky for me is I've had people tell me, well, you won't listen to anybody else's side. It's just your way or the highway. I'm like, listen, that was my side. I wrote books about your side. Like I was so in that and so deep. And I knew the Bible from front to back and I knew everything about, and I was in all the way. So I'm uniquely equipped. If I wanted to, I could fight because I know your side. And it's not really a side thing anyway. So yeah, the benefits are of that, and I can help other people get out. And I am a trusted person in that regard because I'm not just someone who's putting Christianity down. I'm someone who is in it. And the other part, one of my books, it's called Jaded, and it's a poetic reckoning with white evangelical Christian indoctrination. And that's another thing that I'm very firm about. I can only speak to one brand of Christianity, and I'm done with that. And for me, I'm kind of done with all of it at this point, but I'm definitely done with that. But I have friends who are pastors. I have friends who go to church, and that many of them, especially in the Black church, it's a different kind of Christianity. And I'm not here to put any of that down. What I tell people, and this is the last thing I'll say, is that I don't care what you believe, as long as your beliefs don't harm other people. That's the bottom line. It used to be that I had to believe the same as everybody, like they had to believe the same as me. And now I don't feel that way.
I really liked what you said about just, like, not overwhelming people with information to upend what they believe, and something that I've been thinking about, obviously, because this podcast and a lot of work that I do, is thinking about, like, storytelling is that way of, like, easing people in without kind of coddling because you can't question the reality of my story. So I would love to talk about next, especially through the lens of your 3 books, the most recent one. Talk about the intersection between storytelling, activism, and art. What do those connections mean to you?
Okay, I love this question. Each one of those words makes me so excited. Storytelling, activism, art. Yeah, I've always storyteller. And even though my books are nonfiction, there's so many stories in them. So even I'm currently reading back through the books that I wrote back in the day just to get some information for myself. And I'm finding myself, my now self, in that self that wrote those books 20 years ago, because I'm still me. There were just parts of me that I was suppressing. I wasn't allowing. I thought I had to be a submissive wife. Weirdly, the whole, and I won't get into this, but the whole trad wife thing that's going on right now on the internet. Oh my God, I can't believe that this is happening. I can see myself in these these books. So I've been telling stories, and some of the stories that I told in the books, they're still really good. They're funny. I'm like, oh yeah, I can tell a good story. So I've always done that. So I'm continuing to do that. The stories are just changing, right? And part of the work we did in Cambodia was tell stories that are compelling so that people will want to give money to the bamboo libraries. And you know that with Liberation is Lit. You can't just say, I'm opening a bookstore. Can I have some money? You have to tell stories. And there are obviously stories in the books that you're selling, but then other stories that you tell. So social media has been a way where I tell stories. Like I go to places, and you've commented before that I always remember to take photos when we're together because it's a good way to tell a story where I'm like, here's my friend Taylor, and this is what she's doing, and this is what we did today, and here's I'm going to see you later today. I'm going to take some photos. and tell a story. So I've always done that. And activism, not really new for me either. It's just what I'm being an activist for has changed. So I was really an activist for evangelical Christianity. I mean, we call it different things. But when you believe in something and you want other people to take up that cause or believe in what you believe, that's activism. So when I started to wake up to different things, my activism changed into we have to learn the true history. We have to support Black lives. We have to not allow these things to happen and injustice and things like that. And then art, I'm realizing too that that has always been a part of what I do. I've never considered myself really an artist, even though I know now that words are art. And more recently, I've been doing what I call poem art, where I take illustrations from kids' books that I used to have when I was little and cutting out my poems and putting them on illustrations, kind of match what's happening in the poem. And looking back, I remember now I used to make these books. I would cut pictures out of magazines and catalogs. I would make books. Sometimes it was my future family. Like there was me, and I remember my husband one time, he was this J.C. Penney catalog model, and he was in multiple photos, so I could use them throughout my book. Like, here's Nick, my husband, here's me, and here's our little kids and their toys and going through. And when I was pregnant with my first, and she's 23, so this is 24 years ago, I was trying to figure out ways to make money from home. I was like, oh, I'll take old greeting cards that people sent me and I'll cut words out and I'll make these cards and I'll sell them. That never materialized. But I'm doing that now, 24 years later, where I'm taking words and art and putting it together. And it has brought me personally so much healing. And I'm also realizing how much it speaks to other people because there's something about words put together with visual things. And we see that on the internet, all the memes that you see, what makes them powerful? It's an image and then words, and that connection there makes it funny, or it like triggers something in a good way in your mind, in your memory. And even when I'm talking about Instagram, taking photos and then telling a story, it makes the story more powerful if you can see the photos that go along with it. And I'm seeing people do a lot of what I would call protest art. I also have toxic books that I collect from the thrift store, James Dobson in particular. Whenever anybody tells me they don't know who he is, I'm so happy because he is like in his 90s now, that wrote all these books about parenting. But he also, so my parents read these books. He advocated like spanking your kids and disciplining them and breaking their will. He calls these kids strong-willed children, which I absolutely was a strong-willed child. To my parents' credit, they had these books on their bookshelves, but they did not abuse me or my siblings in any way. And so much of what I'm hearing people endured as kids and the patriarchy and their parents and their dads, none of that. Like my dad is kind and loving and wanted me to do anything I wanted as a girl and all of that. But I make protest art now out of these James Dobson book covers where I talk back to him. But art is just a powerful way to get people to think. I mean, you're seeing something and that can, whatever it is, however that works in your brain. I'm reading a book right now called Your Brain on Art. So I'm hoping to make even more of those connections to figure out what's actually happening. But you got this big long thing that you want to say, and people may not read it, but you put like 20 words on a picture and people read it, and that can change their mind. The same thing with poetry. I went from writing prose to writing poetry, and it's just been really a powerful way to get a message across, to get that activism across, to get storytelling across. And if I could do this, I think this every day when I wake up, if I could do this full time and not have to do my other job, I would just, I feel like it would be amazing. But my other job is also writing and editing, and I cannot complain about that. So I'm good for now doing that. And then in all my spare time, I write poems and make poem art.
Yes, I love your poem art, and I used to do, well, I didn't cut out JCPenney models. I'm kidding. But I used to like cut up magazine. Well, okay, I did something maybe a little worse. I would cut
I'm
out
gonna tell, right?
pictures of hot celebrities and make collages of them. And it's so funny. I met one of my friends in seventh grade. We bonded over like, she was like, oh, wait, let me see. And so we would like trade it back and forth. Then I would make new ones. And yeah, so there was no story. It was just pictures of like Usher with his shirt. Yeah. God. But it seems like especially nowadays, like when I see your post about your poem art, it feels like it's very like grounding for you. Is there anything else that like keeps you grounded in like this work that you're doing?
It definitely is. It's very grounded. I love the the physical part of it, like using my hands and putting things together. And I have found that just being in my head all the time is not great for me, but it's where I live a lot. I read a lot and I write a lot. So physically cutting things, physically gluing with a glue stick, physically using a laminator and a paper cutter. I it it's so much fun. And then going to the thrift stores, that part of it is that I've never been a big shopper, I don't think necessarily, but shopping for books that I know are going to be 50 cents, $1, $2, and they're going to be something I really want is I can't describe the feeling. I do describe it. I have a word called whole-farted that I like what makes me fart. What is so calming and so happy to me that it just everything relaxes in my body. And that is definitely it's even more than a bookstore. Like I'll go into a bookstore and I love it, but the the thrill of it has Goodwill has this added thrill of these books are going to be really cheap and you might find a book like I found a few weeks ago in perfect condition, a 1971 book with four of Malcolm X's speeches in it for $1. It's like that something about it that's so great. And that I'm looking for specific things, whether it's books for poem art or I know the kind of books that you want for Liberation of Lit. My friend Letty has a bookshop called But Then You Read. Friend Baker and Maddie, they have the Queer Haven book. So I'm specifically looking for that. And it's something that I have fine tuned over a long time. Like someone asked me once, how, like, if I had any tips for going into a thrift store and finding the good book. I was like, I can't really give you that. You have to know, you have to build up this knowledge of who these authors are, who the authors of color are, what books are good. It's kind of like me. I don't really know much about fashion. So to go into Goodwill and be able to pick out something that would be a really trendy thing to wear for 2024. I can't do that. So yeah, the grounding things for me all have to do with books and poems and writing and art. But too, I have been trying to get outside more. I've been walking for an hour every other day in my neighborhood. And I've never really loved exercise, but this has been so much fun. I'll listen to a podcast or sometimes walk with my oldest kid and there are birds and flowers. I got binoculars for my birthday for my kids to bird watch. And just yesterday, I took the trash out and I realized how good it felt outside. So, trying to slow down, trying to relax and rest, but I'm not the kind of person who just wants to sit and do nothing. I want to do a little bit more of that, but I also know that there are things like poem art and looking for birds that fill me up. So they might be doing things, not just sitting, but they're healing and relaxing for me.
I love that. It's so funny. I have a friend who taught me about birding, and now ever since she taught me about birding, I meet all these people who are interested in birding. And then she sent this meme on Instagram about hot girl hobbies, and birding was one of them. So,
Okay,
yes.
it's coming back. I'm seeing it everywhere. And I don't know if you've read, do you know who Christian Cooper is? The birder?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
it's a book that she recommended, and I
Okay.
read it, and I was like, okay,
Okay.
now I know about birding. And I
Yes.
listened to the audiobook so you could hear the different birds.
Oh
Yes.
my God, that's amazing. And then J. Drew Lanham is have you heard of him? He
Mm-mm.
is a professor at Clemson. He lives here somewhere in South Carolina. He just got the MacArthur Genius Grant maybe in 2022 or 2023. I can't remember. But he writes poetry that's about birding and racism and being a black man in this country. I love it. It's like so good. Then Amy Tan, who wrote the
Mhm.
Joy Luck Club, she has been drawing birds in her backyard for years and years and years now. And she just released a memoir. I'm not letting myself buy it until I finish a couple books, but it's a book where she writes, and her writing is beautiful. I've read her nonfiction too. It's so good. And she writes about birding, and her bird sketches are in there, and they are gorgeous. I don't think it's quite fair that someone can write that well and draw that well, but okay. But she and Christian Cooper are friends now. I saw that he was talking about her, and I've seen a couple other people. So I've been collecting birding books at Goodwill and then seeing all these new ones come out. And I like it because it's easy, like it's accessible. You can do it anywhere. There are birds everywhere, and I don't know a lot about it, and I haven't spent a ton of time doing it, but it feels like a way to slow down, get back to nature, meet people, and yeah. So I think I love anytime I see anything about birds.
And I have my bird tattoo.
Yeah,
So,
you already know, but
yes. So, my last question for you today is, what advice would you offer listeners who want to make a positive impact in their community?
oh wow. I think well, there's a lot, but I think it's really, really, really important, depending on where you are and what your community is like and how diverse it is. I know some people live in communities that are not very diverse at all. People have asked me that question, like, my community is very white. What do I do? And to those people, I tell them, first of all, learn yourself, like read books, read books by Black authors, by Indigenous authors, by other authors of color, read different perspectives, watch different shows, watch different documentaries, follow people on Instagram and Twitter that are writing from different perspectives. Expand your world just before you even go out into your own world and do that. And then find the people in your community who are already doing things. Like, I don't need to start anything at all myself because Taylor has already got this covered. Liberation is Lit. Baker's already doing Queer Haven books. And now I'm meeting all these other people and finding out about them that are already doing all of this in my community. And I moved to this community in the very beginning of the pandemic. I was quarantined in my house. My husband left unexpectedly. All of these things happened. I worked from home. So it's taken me a long time to get out into my community and actually get to know people, but find out who's already doing these things and ask how you can help. And it could be in a very simple way. You don't even have to know things at the beginning. So go support Black owned businesses, Indigenous owned businesses, find out ways that you could volunteer. So it's learning, volunteering, getting to know people, getting outside of your little comfort zone because we stay in the places that we feel safe, we feel like we know things, and it's hard. You can take little steps, but it's such a beautiful world out there when you when you just get to know people who have a different perspective than you. And all the people that I'm friends with now, we don't all believe the same things or agree with the same things, but the general thing that we agree on is that all humans have value, all humans have dignity, and we want them to be whole. Like that's my newest book called Whole, and it's about wanting people to know you are whole just like you are. You are beautiful and loved just like you are, and you don't need to conform to a certain thing or be a certain way. And so yeah, I don't really have a checklist of tangible ways that you can help. I would just say learn more, expand your horizons, look for people in your community that you can support. Supporting independent bookstores is a big deal. Anytime you can buy something from someone who started their own business or is making something. I know it's so easy to just go to Amazon and get things quickly and easily. And I do that, and as someone who doesn't have a lot of what I think is money to spare, it feels easier for me to do. But anytime you can buy something that someone else has created, I wear a lot of things like on my t-shirts. I don't care about clothes very much, so I just buy t-shirts with words on. One last thing, like what it is that you love and you care about. For years and years and years, I was serving at my church and doing these ministries and all this stuff. And a lot of it was not fun for me. I did not enjoy it. It was not what I wanted to be doing. So, what I love and reading and writing. So now how I'm giving back and serving and volunteering, it all has to do with that. So I can do such a better job of helping when I'm helping in a way that also fills me up. And if we could each find those things. So if you like to garden, find a way that you can help with gardening. If you like to sew or crochet or knit, find something like that. If your favorite thing to do is shop at all the people's stores.
Well, thank you so much, Marla, for this amazing conversation. And it's always so much fun to talk to you. Where can people find you and keep up with you and your work?
I hang out mostly on Instagram and Thread at Marla Taviano. And then my bookstagram is at White Girl Learning. I have a website, marlataviano.com. There might be a few things there. And then my books can be found anywhere books are sold. And the titles of those are Unbelieved, Jaded, and Whole. And then I have a book called Please Cut Out My Poem, where you can make your own poem art. You can find us on lakedrivebooks.com also, or like I said, anywhere. But I love meeting new people. I love hearing from people. Like, I heard you on Taylor's podcast. So yeah, reach out, and I love to make new friends.
Well, thank you so much. And y'all know where to find Marla. So thank you for being part of the Liberation is Lit podcast. If you have stories you want to share or want to suggest topics or just want to connect, you can find us Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Liberation is Lit, or visit our website, liberationslit.com. And y'all have a good rest of your day.